So here's a question for you. How do you take a championship contending team and in 3 short years burn that organization to the mother humping ground? Well, for the San Francisco 49ers, the answer is very simple. It really comes down to 2 words: Trent Baalke. Whether it be due to ego, incompetence, stupidity, I believe a combination of all those factors and so many more negative ones, Trent Baalke took a 49ers team that was on the cusp of winning a Super Bowl, on the cusp of getting back to a second straight Super Bowl, and decided that he had seen enough and he wanted to ruin them. You run off Jim Harbaugh so that way you can promote Jim Tomsula. All the while, because you had such a love fest for Jim Tomsula, you lost the opportunity to hire Adam Gase, who wanted to come to San Francisco, but you told him he had to keep Tomsula. Why the hell would Adam Gase want to keep the defensive line coach if he didn't have to, if it wasn't his choice? Can't blame him for taking the job, so they just gave the job to Tomsula so that way he could be fired after 1 year just to sit there and bring in Chip Kelly, a guy who had run his way out of town in Philadelphia, to bring him in and end up going 2-14. Now, while I don't necessarily fully agree with Chip Kelly being fired after 1 year, I understand the reasonings ultimately why the 49ers decided to clean house. But at the end of the day, the most important thing they had to do was they had to fire Trent Baalke. Enough was enough. And the fact that he still had a job, I think, was astronomical to me. Once he couldn't get along with Harbaugh, once he decided to run Harbaugh out of town, that really should have been it. But especially once Jim Tomsula was one and done, that had to be it. So, of course, the York family decided, let's let Baalke burn this motherfucker to the ground even more. And ultimately, lo and behold, what do you know? That's exactly what the hell he did. 2-14. There are only 2 victories against the Los Angeles Rams, a team that won a total of 4 games in 2016. So what the hell does that tell you? Years of guys retiring out of the blue, not replenishing them with solid drafts because, of course, the 49ers have botched so many drafts in recent years. A.J. Jenkins, 49ers fans, that's all the hell I need to say to you. But wait, there could be so much more, but we don't have time to talk about it. I mean, it's just so many different factors. Poor drafting, not going out and targeting good guys in free agency to replenish some of those guys that you lost. Like, for example, you bring in Torrey Smith. Like, what the hell is Torrey Smith going to do to move any needle for you whatsoever? You criminally neglect the quarterback position and decide you're going to roll into 2016 with Colin Kaepernick and Blaine Gabbert battling it out for the starting position. Gee, I wonder why this team went 2-14. Oh my Christ almighty. So you look at this 49ers organization and you say, similar to the Cleveland Browns, they put themselves in this scenario, but it can't get much worse. Maybe it can't. But maybe it can. Maybe it just can. Apparently, the York family, the San Francisco 49ers, decided to go the Matt Millen Detroit Lions route. They needed a new general manager. So instead of hiring somebody like an Elliott Wolf, hiring somebody that has actually worked for years in an NFL scouting department, in a front office, that knows what the hell they're doing, has actually done the job before, or work equivalent to the job before, the San Francisco 49ers come completely out of fucking left field and name John Lynch their general manager. That's right, that John Lynch. You can't even joke about this stuff. The San Francisco 49ers literally hired John Lynch to be their general manager. Now, I was asked several times, I think by different people, if I was going to do a video about this hiring, and the short answer was no. And here's why. Because we can compare this to the Matt Millen situation in Detroit. A very good player, great player in the case of John Lynch, but a very good player in Matt Millen back in the day with the Raiders and 49ers that was pretty well accomplished as a TV broadcaster, and you think he was still around the game. He's been able to see what good players look like and not so good players look like. He was a good player himself. He played on some good quality teams. You would think he would know. You'd think he would understand. You're bringing in a guy with championship pedigree. You could see the appeal potentially to bringing in a Matt Millen. And of course, it ultimately did not work. It ended up being an epic failure. So why the hell would the 49ers go this route with John Lynch? Because it seems like on the surface, the type of move that just reaches out to and screams to you of stupidity and idiocracy. But with that said, I also look at the Denver Broncos and John Elway, former Hall of Fame quarterback, who had never really done much work in terms of scouting, in terms of free agency, anything like that. He comes into the organization in 2011, and a few years later, he builds a championship winning team. And all the while, mind you, that was with a decrepit, broken down, washed up, has been version of Peyton Manning when they finally won the Super Bowl in 2015 season. So for the Matt Millen example, I could also give you the John Elway example. It's not the route that I would have went. It doesn't mean that it automatically has to fail. But based off of the 49ers and their recent history and the decision to do what they did, I could understand where a lot of people might sit there and say, this is going to be one big dumpster fire. And it potentially could be. But again, I think sometimes we overrate the general manager in terms of the actual evaluation of talent and the selecting of players, because a lot of times it's about the infrastructure of the organization underneath you. And if you assemble quality scouts, you get a quality director of college scouting. You could have a general manager who's not the best at talent evaluation that could still be given good information and still make good football decisions, good draft choices. Ultimately, you like your general manager know what the hell he's doing, but at this point in time, we don't know enough to know whether or not John Lynch knows what the hell he's doing or not. So I'm going to reserve judgment for now, and I think it's a wise thing to do. It looks like it should fail, and it very well could, and it could be another Millen type of epic failure. But I look at the John Elway situation and say it really worked there, so why couldn't it really work in San Francisco? It's just not the path that I would have went down. In terms of the next head coach, I think everybody understands that after the Super Bowl, Kyle Shanahan will be announced as the next head coach of the San Francisco 49ers. And to be honest with you, this kind of reminds you a little bit of what the Falcons did a couple of years ago as Seattle was sitting there getting ready to play in the Super Bowl against New England. Everybody knew that Dan Quinn was going to be the next head guy of the Atlanta Falcons, and they were patient and they waited, and it's paid off now. It's a team that's in Super Bowl 51. Not saying the 49ers are going to get to that point in 2 years, but the point is that sometimes it's not about being the first to make a hire. Sometimes it's about making the right hire or the best possible hire you could. And based off of the names available, the names in the marketplace, and the hires that have been made, I think by far, even though they're the last to ultimately, it looks like, hire a head coach, I think they will by far done the best job with the hiring of Kyle Shanahan. He's ready to be an NFL head coach, or at least be given a shot to. When you look at the work he did with Atlanta and that offense, this is a guy that's been knocking on the doorstep a few years now for being an NFL head coach. So you look at a young head coach, a new, fresh general manager. Maybe they bring a different, fresh perspective to an organization that badly needs it. One of the reasons this team is in the position it is because of their piss poor drafting under Baalke in recent years. I mean, it's been really bad. And I can even remember a couple of years going forward after the Super Bowl, I kept talking about the fact eventually these bad drafts are going to catch up with the 49ers, and they ultimately did. You get some surprise retirements from the Chris Borlands of the world and such. Patrick Willis retires, and so many other guys leave, Anthony Davis, so on and so forth. Really leaves your talent cupboard bare, especially if you're not replenishing your organization with quality talent. Now, the 2016 draft, I really liked the pick of DeForest Buckner. I thought it was good value and fit a position of need, even though they had just taken Eric Armstead the year before. I always said that I thought Buckner was better at Oregon than Armstead was, and I thought Buckner was the better NFL talent than Armstead was. And I look at Buckner and the type of player he is. You know, when they bring in Kyle Shanahan, when they bring in John Lynch, are they going to ultimately want to run a 4-3? There's a chance or a possibility. A guy like Buckner, you can build your 4-3 defense around, but if you want to stick in a 3-4, you can build it around him too. Now, the trading up for Joshua Garnett, tail end of round one, he wasn't very good as a rookie, but one bad rookie season does not necessarily have to be what a career is made out of. They got nothing out of third-round pick Will Redmond because he was hurt all year. Rashard Robinson out of LSU, he had some off-the-field concerns and so on, but I thought he played really well as a rookie. So they got something out of the 2016 class. It frankly was one of Baalke's better drafts. It wasn't the 2011 draft and what that meant for that organization, but it was definitely one of the better ones, which isn't really saying a whole lot. Now, heading into this offseason, this is a 49ers team that has the capital to be able to improve and improve in a hurry, potentially. At least the talent on the team. They've got over $80 million in cap space. Now, they're going to have to look at this and look at some of the guys that they have drafted in recent years and determine if they're going to re-sign them, pick up options, so on and so forth. Eric Reed's a free agent, I believe. You're going to probably want to hurry up and get his contract done. He's not a superstar, but you have the money to spend. You're going to have to spend some of it. You might as well spend it on a guy that you're familiar with, a guy that can play at least a little bit. But they're going to have to make decisions on guys from the 2014 draft, such as Jimmy Ward and Carlos Hyde and Marcus Martin, Aaron Lynch, Dante Johnson. Good teams, typically what they would do in these type of situations, they take some of these better talents after they've gotten through their third year, when you could start renegotiating with them and negotiating long-term contracts, you would lock them up. Priority number one out of all these guys would be Carlos Hyde. Number two would probably be Aaron Lynch. Number three would probably be Marcus Martin. Now with Jimmy Ward, maybe you pick up his fifth-year option, or maybe you just realize he can't cut it and he can't stay healthy and he's not very good even when he is healthy, and you decline his fifth-year option and put him under a contract prove-it type of year here in 2017. It remains to be seen, but they have some money, so if they want to keep most of these guys and lock them up long-term, this would be the time to do it. But again, they're still going to have money to spend in free agency, some guys they could potentially target. Tony Jefferson, the safety from Arizona, you could weaken a divisional rival and strengthen yourself at the same time. You could do the same thing with the Trumaine Johnson. The 49ers need some help in the secondary, you would assume, with a Hall of Fame type of safety now running the football operations in John Lynch, that the secondary is going to be a bigger priority than it has been. So I'd expect one of these guys, Jefferson, Trumaine Johnson, are going to get some looks from this organization. They need somebody at the wide receiver position. I know it's not a great name or a big name, but it's somebody who could still play a little bit, and that's Pierre Garçon. Maybe going after Ricky Wagner from the Baltimore Ravens, because they've never quite been able to fill the void that was left when Anthony Davis retired. Then he wants to play. I mean, he really pulled off a Ross Perot. I quit, I'm back. I quit, I'm back. I quit, I'm back. I quit, I'm back. Jesus Christ, make up your mind, just go away. But ultimately, this team's going to have to do better in the NFL draft. And that's where it's ultimately going to matter with John Lynch. Because when it's all said and done, if you have a bunch of money to spend, there's going to be somebody that'll take that money, because you can outbid somebody. You can give them an opportunity and featuring that other teams can't. But you can't get by with that type of spend crazy philosophy. You have to be able to draft and develop young talent. And when it comes to the 49ers, that's what's been lacking for the past several years. And they really got to turn it around starting with 2017. And that's where John Lynch is going to be ultimately measured by. And that's ultimately going to determine Kyle Shanahan's success and or failure as a San Francisco 49ers head coach. Now, in terms of their needs, you can argue for a 2-14 team that their only 2 wins came against the Rams and they lost everybody else, with a defense that you could run anybody through, an offense that absolutely stunk, that they have needs everywhere, and that is true. They pretty much have needs everywhere. So we can get into team needs. Granted, the number one need is a quarterback, because Gabbert stinks. Should not be starting for any NFL team. Colin Kaepernick's probably going to opt out and go in free agency. And as far as I'm concerned, from the 49ers standpoint, good riddance. And it really doesn't have much to do with the anthem protest. It really doesn't. It just has to do with the fact that the guy hasn't progressed or developed as a quarterback on the field. I don't care if he kneels during the damn national anthem. He still can't read a fucking defense, and his accuracy is still atrocious. He's just not an NFL starting quarterback. They need to move on. Of course, leave it to the 49ers to screw this up and get a number 2 overall pick in a draft that is really weak at the quarterback position. Now, that doesn't mean that they won't take a quarterback. And bringing in a guy like Kyle Shanahan to be your head guy, if he thinks that a guy is worth that 2nd overall pick, then so be it. I think they'd be crazy to take a quarterback there in this draft with this quarterback class, but who's to say it wouldn't happen? But like I said, they have needs all over the place on offense. They need some help on the offensive line still, particularly at the tackle position. They really need a wide receiver. If they already had the young quarterback, let's say they got the young quarterback last year and you felt good about him going forward, then the draft philosophy potentially would be wide receiver, wide receiver, wide receiver. Because their wide receivers stink. They suck donkey dick. Period. Now, it's an insult to donkey dicks, because these wide receivers of the 49ers are not worth being able to suck the dicks of donkeys. Defensively, they have needs in the secondary. They could probably use some youth in the linebacking core. But again, a bad team that has needs all over the place. It'll be interesting to see what happens with the 49ers, because this looks like a situation where somebody could come in and impart a quick turnaround. especially with the Rams sucking and the Cardinals appearing to head in the wrong direction and the Seahawks maybe at the tail end of their run. There's a window of opportunity there for somebody to really take control of that division in the next 2 to 3 years. It's just when you're hiring a broadcaster who hasn't played the game in over a decade to be your general manager, passing over other several qualified, frankly, more qualified people, and you have no quarterback on the roster, you have one of the least talented rosters in all of the National Football League, there's going to be a long road to hoe. This thing is going to take a long time to fix because this organization really became one big dumpster fire. Thanks, Trent Baalke.